Have you ever wanted something so badly that your heart ached for it? So much so that it felt like your whole world revolved around that one desire. Today, we're diving into an ancient story that's all about that feeling. It's a powerful tale of faith, patience, and a promise that changed the course of history. This is the story of Hannah, a woman whose deep sorrow was transformed into incredible joy. Let's set the scene. We're in ancient Israel, in the hill country of Ephraim. There lived a man named Elkanah. Elkanah had two wives, a common practice back then. One was named Peninnah, and the other was Hannah. Now, Peninnah had children, sons and daughters, but Hannah had none. And in that culture, being childless was a source of profound shame and sadness for a woman. Elkanah was a devout man. Every year, he would take his family to Shiloh, where the tabernacle, the house of God, was located. They would go to worship and offer sacrifices. Elkanah loved Hannah very much. When it was time to share the sacrificial meal, he would always give Hannah a double portion, trying to show his love and compensate for her sadness. But his kindness, while well-intentioned, couldn't heal the ache in her heart. Her rival, Peninnah, made things so much worse. Seeing Hannah's special treatment and knowing her deepest vulnerability, Peninnah would taunt her relentlessly. She would provoke and irritate Hannah, constantly reminding her that God had closed her womb. Imagine that, year after year, enduring constant mockery from someone living under the same roof. It was a cruel and persistent torment that left Hannah heartbroken. During one of these annual trips to Shiloh, Hannah reached her breaking point. After the family meal, while everyone else was eating and drinking, Hannah was so overwhelmed with grief that she couldn't eat a thing. She would just weep. Elkanah tried to comfort her, saying, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" He loved her, but he just couldn't understand the depth of her pain. So, Hannah got up and went to the tabernacle to pray. She was in bitter distress, weeping uncontrollably as she poured out her heart to God. Eli, the high priest, was sitting on his chair near the entrance. He saw Hannah, but he couldn't hear what she was saying because she was praying silently in her heart. Only her lips were moving. This was unusual. Most people prayed aloud back then. Seeing her intense, silent prayer and her deep emotional state, Eli made a wrong assumption. He thought she was drunk. He confronted her, saying, "How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you." Can you imagine? In her moment of deepest anguish, she was not only misunderstood but also falsely accused by the highest religious authority in the land. But Hannah, with grace and dignity, responded. "No, my lord," she said. "I am a woman deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or strong drink. I was pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not take your servant for a worthless woman, for I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation." Her answer was so clear, so earnest, that Eli immediately realized his mistake. His heart softened. He saw her sincerity and her pain. He then gave her a blessing, a word of hope that would change everything. He said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him." Something shifted in Hannah after that encounter. Eli's words were a balm to her wounded spirit. She replied, "May your servant find favor in your eyes." And with that, she went on her way. She was able to eat, and her face was no longer downcast. She hadn't received a physical confirmation or a sign, just a word of blessing from the priest. But she chose to hold onto that promise with faith. She left her burden at the altar and trusted that God had heard her. The next morning, Elkanah and his family worshiped before the Lord one last time, and then returned to their home in Ramah. And the Bible tells us that the Lord remembered her. In due time, Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son. Her sorrow had turned into the greatest joy imaginable. She named him Samuel, which means heard by God or asked of God. She explained the name, saying, "Because I asked the Lord for him." This name would be a lifelong reminder of how God had answered her desperate prayer. Hannah knew this child was not just for her, he was a gift from God, and she had made a promise. Remember her prayer in the tabernacle. It wasn't just a plea, it was a vow. She had told God, "O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall ever touch his head." This was a Nazirite vow, dedicating her son completely to God's service. So, when it was time for the next annual trip to Shiloh, Hannah stayed home. She told Elkanah, "As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear before the Lord and remain there forever." She was going to fulfill her promise. The day finally came. After Samuel was weaned, which was likely when he was about 3 or 4 years old, Hannah took him up to Shiloh. She brought with her a generous offering, a 3-year-old bull of flour, and a skin of wine. This wasn't a small token, it was a significant sacrifice, showing the depth of her gratitude. She went straight to Eli the priest. Can you picture this moment? The same priest who once accused her of being drunk was now face to face with her again. She said to him, "Pardon me, my lord. As surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given to the Lord." And right there, she handed over her precious, long-awaited son to be raised in the tabernacle to serve God under Eli's guidance. This act of faith is just breathtaking. She had yearned for a son for years. And now that she had him, she was giving him back to God, fulfilling her vow without hesitation. After leaving Samuel at the tabernacle, Hannah didn't fall into despair. Instead, she offered one of the most beautiful prayers of praise in the entire Bible. It's a song of triumph and gratitude. She starts by saying, "My heart rejoices in the Lord, and the Lord my horn is lifted high." Her prayer celebrates God's power to reverse fortunes. He brings down the proud and lifts up the humble. He raises the poor from the dust and makes the barren woman a joyful mother. It's a powerful declaration that God is in control of everything. And God honored Hannah's faithfulness in an extraordinary way. The story doesn't end there. Though she gave her firstborn son to the Lord, she wasn't left childless. The Bible tells us that Eli would bless Elkanah and Hannah each year when they came to Shiloh, praying that God would give them more children in place of the one she dedicated to the Lord. And God did. Hannah went on to have 3 more sons and 2 daughters. Her one act of faithful sacrifice was rewarded with abundance. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord at the tabernacle. He became one of Israel's greatest prophets, priests, and judges. It was Samuel who would anoint Israel's first 2 kings, Saul and David. The little boy, born from a mother's desperate prayer, became a pivotal figure in the history of his nation, guiding them and speaking God's word to them. Hannah's story is a profound lesson in faith, perseverance, and the power of prayer. She turned her deepest pain into a prayer, her prayer into a promise, and her promise into an act of incredible faith. She teaches us that even when we feel forgotten, God hears our cries. And when we entrust our deepest desires and even our greatest gifts back to Him, He can do more than we could ever ask or imagine. Her story has echoed through millennia, offering hope to anyone who has ever felt overlooked or unheard. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into Hannah's story. If it touched you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more stories like this. What part of her story resonates with you the most? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time.